Goes from the Midwest all the way out to the California coast.
What?
Route 66.
Oh, yeah, I traveled it when it was in operation.
Just when they just made it?
No,
Oh,
I did
okay.
it in the late 50s.
Okay.
Going from Chicago almost all the way
Oh, yeah?
to New Orleans to
I went from Vegas.
Los Angeles.
I went from Vegas to California on it, but
No,
that's.
I went the full route.
Did you get your tricks?
No, unfortunately, no. Oh, it's 7:04. I
Yep,
guess
it's
we
ready.
should start. You ready to start up there?
Said
Yep.
so, yes, ready.
No, I know. Turn the sound on. Oh, it is? Oh, okay. I'd like to call this workshop on zoning revision to order on December 5th, 2019. Please rise. We'll pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I'll turn over the operation of the workshop to Councilman Dean Michael.
So before we get started on anything else, I did give everybody a copy of the changed 250-64 for your review. Also, in the notes, I added in a definition of recreational vehicle. It's on page 2 in the bottom, that I took out of the village of Ravenna. That was the shorter one. There was one that was a whole page, so I was just kind of looking to see if you wanted to use that as a definition, or do we want to be more specific?
But just read it to him.
I'll read it. Any motorized or towable vehicle that combines transportation and temporary living quarters for travel, recreation, and camping, Winnebago, motorhome, boat, bus, designed to carry more than 30 passengers, camper trailer, boat trailer, house trailer, storage or equipment trailer, or trailer designed for the transportation of goods, or trailer for the transportation of recreational equipment.
That's got some problem. First of all, Winnebago, I wouldn't put in because not your product defining it.
Yep, no,
personally.
I agree with that.
Because that's a motor home anyways by definition. Bus design. Now, a bus, how do you exclude school buses under this criteria?
Well, it's saying that it's made for living. A school bus, I don't think, is made for living. It's just saying that it's,
No, but a person could have a bus that he's converted into what's considered a motor home.
right, and by
But
the
it's-
definition, it has to be a bus that carries 30 passengers or more, and it was designed for living quarters.
You mean originally designed to carry 30 passengers or
Right.
more? I would put originally or something because normally people don't have 30 people in their family.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't matter if they're in their family, but
Yeah, well, I
But
meant
they
as a
don't-
group.
yeah, usually a motorhome of any sort doesn't really carry 30 people.
No, I know, but I'm just saying bus originally designed to carry more than 30 passengers. But I don't even see why you even worry about the definition number of passengers, because they could get one of these mini buses that the schools have too, and they only hold, I don't know, 25 kids or
Mhm.
15, I don't know, whatever. I see them, I just don't know how many kids are in them. You might know better because you
I don't
don't
know.
see them.
So we could take out more than 30 and just leave in originally
Originally
designed to carry
designed.
passengers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally designed for passengers.
Do you have another copy of that definition?
No, it's in the notes of the meeting.
I can give him this.
Here,
You can
here's-
take Elliot's copy.
Yeah, he's not here to read.
I did not get a copy of it.
It's at the bottom of page 2
Bottom of
there.
the second page right there.
Right where your fingers are.
Well, this is gonna go into the definition
Trailer,
section anyway, so
storage,
we got plenty of time
trailer equipment.
to reevaluate it, but the thought was that there was no definition for recreational vehicle. So I did a search and I came up with one that was, like I said, a whole page where it lists every item and it gave a definition for every item, versus this one, which was just a quick synopsis.
I have another problem with the second line from the bottom. It says, or
Trailer.
equipment, trailer, or trailer designed for the transportation of goods. That could be anything, has nothing to do with recreation.
Well, I'm saying that it says, it's a vehicle that combines transportation and temporary living quarters for travel.
Recreation and camping, I think linguistically you'd have a problem in a court of law with that definition.
The other town is using it.
That doesn't
But,
make it right. Maybe our inactive judge can give us some guidance.
Russ, you have something to say, or Russ Tompkins?
Yeah, Russ Tompkins, Schultzville. If I understood you correctly, Dean, you said we didn't have a definition. And apparently, when I'm looking at the definition currently of camping trailer or camping vehicle, we do have that definition.
We have that definition.
So I'm
This is
looking at
supposed to
the
be recreational vehicle,
page you just handed me.
right?
So is that going to replace camping trailer or camping vehicle?
No.
It's not going to
This
replace
is
the
an
definition we
addition.
have?
This is to define recreational vehicle versus camping trailer, camping. Because right now
Well-
it says refer to camping trailer.
I mean, the definition we have here says any recreational vehicle designed as temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, or travel use, which either has its own motive power or is mounted or towed by another vehicle. So it sounds like we've got a definition. I don't know quite what you're trying to accomplish by,
Well, someone said we didn't have a definition of recreational vehicle. I mean, if you want, we can take camping trailer, camping, and just duplicate it for recreational vehicle, so it's in both places.
Yeah, I think camping vehicle should probably say, please see recreational vehicle, and recreational vehicle could include those and ATVs and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I don't know. It seems to me like the one we've got covers everything. It covers tiny homes. It covers manufactured modular homes. It says buses are included in definition only when they are equipped as motor homes or recreational vehicles. It sounds like the one we've got is longer, and I don't know what's missing from the definition we have at this time.
The word's recreational vehicle, right?
Well, right now, the recreational vehicle says C camping vehicle. But it sounds like it should be the other way around. Camping vehicle should say C recreational vehicle, and in recreational vehicle, we could take that language.
Just use the one that's there.
Um,
Because I think with these trailer things, as I was talking about with goods and stuff, sort of confounds the issue.
So you want to do that? Just take the camping vehicle and rename it for recreational vehicle, and
Take,
say camping vehicle and say C recreational vehicle?
yeah, I think that's probably the straightest way to do it.
I would take out the words camping trailer and say recreational vehicle or camping vehicle. And that way you're covering both terms.
Well, it used to have camping trailer or camping vehicle campground, and we scratched that out. And we just made campground, campsite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a better way to go.
So does everybody agree with that? And then there's a bunch of changes, but we can go over that when we go over definitions.
Oh, yeah.
And was there any extra changes to 25064? If not, we can go to 25066.
Real quick from last time, I know we went over the short-term rentals, and I was given some tasks to do in between. I did send questions to Salerno about the insurance provisions in there, and they have not come back to me yet. I've sent them 2 messages. I had an email to Lewis about the fire extinguishers and the 30-day provision on the review on a renewal. And he got back to me with a scanned copy of the law with a whole bunch of comments written in the side, but didn't say a word about the 30-day thing. So I think he didn't object to that. And the fire extinguishers were fine. And we've been playing phone tag for a couple days, so we'll talk about what other comments he had in there. And Shane and I have just been going back and forth. But the one question we really had with Shane, and I know Ian was concerned about it as well, was limiting permits to one permit per person on the type 2, the non-hosted. He, again, just felt that, it was something that was punitive and that it could be challenged and we'd lose, but he suggested we change it to 2 permits per person, and then there'd be far less likelihood that someone would challenge it, because most people probably wouldn't want more than 2 in the town.
No, wait.
I think that's
more
something-
than 2.
Yeah, because what we had
To
said,
what?
what we had said is we were limiting the permits to 1 permit per person, basically, so that they couldn't buy up multiple properties and run a whole bunch of Airbnbs throughout the town. And Shane didn't like that. He thought it was punitive and that we would lose if it was challenged. And he thinks that if we at least changed it, because we were sort of like, it was unclear what he was objecting to. So he thinks that if we at least changed it to 2, it'd be far less likely. I mean, I suppose the situation still exists that somebody could challenge it, but
Yeah, because, you could have 1 permit to the husband, 1 permit to the wife.
yeah, and that's, yeah. And if we changed it to 2, then they could each have 2 and
Yeah.
they'd have 4 properties.
Yeah.
And that would be perfectly acceptable, I suppose. But it's just something we can talk about at the next
Yeah,
meeting when we have a
okay.
discussion on it. I just wanted you to know I am following up on these things, and I'll have the updated one before the meeting on Tuesday. I'll probably send something this weekend. Yeah.
Ian Schrank, Fiddler's Bridge. So as you remember, last time there was a little bit of confusion about the short-term rental, and Russ and I both were not really prepared for it. I did have a handful of comments after I read it. Is that something I should mail in? Should I tell you now what?
Well, email him in, because he's still working on the
Okay.
Yeah,
draft document anyway.
I've incorporated in the newest draft that I have, only me and Shane has seen it, everything that we did last time. So I feel like we're pretty close on this thing now. But send me your comments
Okay.
and we'll continue to massage it.
And they may be redundant with what we talked about. I'm just saying.
Well, he was there at least.
No, I understand. Because other things could have cropped up in the process of rewriting that we didn't even mention.
Yeah.
One other comment on the short-term rental, and then I guess we can go on, is why did you limit to the hosted to 1 bedroom? Where did that come from?
It eliminated the conflict between Airbnbs and bed and breakfast establishments, which are already in existence. So if anything that has more than 1 bedroom falls under bed and breakfast establishments. So there are people that are already permitted to do that.
Right, that's why I was wondering why you kind of limited it to 1 or less. I mean,
It's,
less
if it's,
than 1 or 1
because I think,
or more than 1.
I'm not sure, but I think bed and breakfast establishments have more than 1 bedroom.
Right.
That they're,
They could have more.
But I thought we were
But they have to
eliminating
have
bed and
food.
breakfast.
no, no, because it ended up with more conflicts since they're serving meals and there was differences between them. So Shane worked it out and said if we just keep it to 1 bedroom, that could be typed 1. Bed and breakfast establishments remain and stay where they're at.
Okay.
And then the non-hosted is their own.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so 25066, commercial horse boarding, commercial equine operation, which previously was called public stables and riding academies, but I guess the state has been upgrading a lot of these names, so when our town planner was creating all these changes, he updated the language to match what the state's new language is.
My first comment comes under A1. The minimum lot size shall be 7 acres. It was originally 5. Why the increase? What required a difference?
I don't know.
Is there some state law, or where does it come from? 2 acres is, pretty big.
Yeah, I know a lot of towns just require 3 for the first
Yeah.
horse, and so, we can certainly change it back to 5 as far as,
This is just on the commercial, right?
yeah, it's on the commercial size.
I don't know.
Ian Trank. For what it's worth, commercial horse boarding and breeding can be disruptive, smelly, noisy, and to me, 7 acres is not all that big, actually. And the more space you would put between me where I live and a horse operation, I would like it more. So I kind of like increase. There's no magic to 7 that I'm aware of.
That's
but
why I'm asking.
I'm
Was
not
there a
aware of any
basis?
magic
Yeah.
to it. Maybe they just thought, give it a little bit more space. And I actually had a related comment, which I'll mention down in B3, which is the buildings can be as close as 50 feet from property line. Elsewhere, it talks about 200 feet in A2. And I just didn't know why one was different from the other, and I would have thought they should both be 200, or at least increase the 50 to 150.
Yeah. But, coming back to this, smell is not the issue. I'm just trying to understand the 5-acre thing. Oh, go ahead, Russ. You can. Oh, yeah, I know you're a horse person. I'm not. So, I would just leave it at 5, okay? Because as long as they are considered a farm, that's what they would be considered here.
But you're talking minimum, so that's no big
And,
deal.
and I assume that includes the whole property, house, septic field, garages,
Yeah,
stables.
there's no offset for,
No, well, no, I'm just,
Mhm.
because in the past, we did have certain numbers for private people, which didn't include the house and all, when they did the measurements of acreage. So I'd say leave it at 5. 5 seemed to work good before.
And this is a change. I mean, it's been 5
Yeah,
forever.
yeah, so
like I said, I know some towns that are 3, but
Yeah.
again, we're talking about commercial, and I may
I
be
know.
mixing up the 3 with just the regular, what you're allowed to have, but just talking about a commercial horse boarding, commercial equine operation.
yeah, we haven't really seen a significant problem with that kind of operation, with that number of 5. Most of them tend to be 30, 40
A lot bigger,
acres
yeah.
anyways.
Sure.
So, I mean,
Because I do think that the state code is that you can only have your first horse on 3 acres and each additional one for each additional acre.
yeah,
So even at 5 acres, you'd still only be allowed to have 3 horses.
yeah. But they would have more, most places that do this kind of stuff have 50 to 75 or 100 acres, so the acreage is not the limitation
Mhm.
in a real sense. I just don't see the need to go up there.
Okay. Anybody object? Okay.
Russ?
Okay, then number 3. This whole thing on manure. And this is interesting here because you didn't say they had to take it and put it on the fields every day, where we have in the other places, which I don't agree with.
I think we eliminated that from the other places, though, didn't we?
I hope we did. I
think
lost
we did.
track.
I think we did.
Russ Tompkins Schultz. So just on that point, Ray,
Yeah.
I made a copy, and if you guys recall, you made changes in AR3, AR5, C, and F sections earlier, and you covered animal waste, and the statement said, animal waste stockpiling and storage of manure is not permitted unless provision has been made to ensure leachate and runoff from manure piles do not seep into surface water or groundwater. That wording, since you've done that in 4 places prior to this, I feel should be in here, so that it's all the same throughout the whole book, you know? And we did go and change it in those sections. Those sections all have this much more simpler thing. This one says it shall be covered and contained in a structure so designed to prevent leachate from entering soil or groundwater. Manure storage shall be located not less than 200 feet from any public water supply, regulated wetland, watercourse, or neighboring property. In manure storage in those previous sections, we put them all under the same category,
We did, yeah.
saying, you know, you
same
can't
wording.
stockpile and store manure unless provision has been made. So, I mean, I don't understand how you'd have it mentioning manure in those other sections and then turn around here
And change
and
it.
have an entirely different wording. I think to be consistent throughout the whole book, you should have the same thing here.
Well, again, the only difference would be, and I'm not objecting to what you're saying, is that this is, based on a commercial operation, where an AR3 could be, or AR5 could be just a person who has their own personal horse.
Now, we're talking in this section, well, for now, under A3, you're talking about commercial.
Yeah.
The same wording is used in the private in B4.
If you want to go down, also, when you get down to B4 for private, I think that should have the same wording that I told you before. A3 and B4 should be consistent with what you've already put into the zoning for the sections of AR3, AR5, C, and F sections.
Should be consistency between these sections.
I know at one of the meetings, Lenore was here, lives over, I forget her last name. She was very concerned about this potential, and there was a few other people in the audience, potential for buildings, and it said, it would be a very difficult thing to require a building or a structure,
Yeah.
And
They're hard to empty.
if you go, for instance, if you go to town of Stanford and you're talking about manure, they have a section that says maybe it's not Stanford, maybe it's Milan. They have a town of Milan. Something about 10 cubic yards I saw somewheres. Okay, town of Stanford, section C, in all zoning districts, not more than 10 cubic yards of manure shall be stored within 100 feet of any residence, well, stream, or body of water. So, I mean, they come into a thing with a certain volume. But, it depends upon the time of year when you can get it out and when you can't get it out.
Yeah. Deep snow you can't spread.
I remember Doug White, he had bought a track mechanism that he could put onto his back wheels and front dolly wheels of a tractor so he could spread manure in the winter with a track device because it built up. But I just think that it should be consistent.
Okay.
The other thing is, in that same paragraph number 3, it says of any public water supply. There isn't any public water supply in the town.
Right.
The only past public water kind of supply that had the state inspection was Camp Exton, or Highview as it was called recently. Now it's defunct and gone. But there they had a water system that filled the cabins and other things. And that was the only one I know of that was done. So it's
The one difference I see between this and like the AR5, AR3 regulations is just that those aren't necessarily for, animal boarding. This isn't commercial activity here. This is just if you have animal waste, stockpile or storage of manure isn't permitted unless provisions have been made to ensure that it doesn't seep into groundwater. So this one assumes, because of the commercial operation of it, it's assuming that there has to be manure storage somewhere. I think if we changed it to at least manure storage areas shall be designed, so we cut out covered or contained in a structure. So manure storage areas shall be designed to prevent leachate from entering soil or groundwater or surface water. Because that's what we got to do anyway. I mean, we've got to protect the groundwater anyway.
if you spread manure on the field, it's going to go someplace whenever it rains. Water flows downhill no matter how you do it.
Mhm.
And this is how a farmer fertilizes his fields.
I understand this, but that's why we have distances from water supplies. And that's why you see it in town of Stanford, because the soil itself filters it.
Yeah, no, I
So as it's
understand.
running the 200 or 300 feet to a water course, it gets filtered. And
Also, this language here is focused on storage. So if you're spreading in a field,
Yeah, that's
you don't
not what
even
this is.
trip paragraph 3.
No, I understand.
3 is only if it's stored, and to me, it's critical that it be designed, your wording, Mike, is fine.
Right.
It be designed so it doesn't get into anyone's water.
yeah, when we're not requiring somebody to create a structure, it just as long as they design some sort of system so that it's not going into the water.
Yeah,
And will
could
the
be a
200
berm.
Yeah, whatever they need to do.
Will the 200 feet remain?
I think it should.
I don't know what's defined as a public water supply.
Well, if there isn't any, we can get
Well,
rid of it, obviously, right?
I-
But keeping
I-
in the
I-
regulated
just-
wetland, water course, and the neighboring property line, I think would be important. I mean, no one wants a manure pile
Yeah.
that close to
I don't
their
know of any
property.
public water supply, so.
Yeah, but we can take out the words public water supply and keep in regulated wetland, water course, neighboring property line.
Yeah, I'm not objecting, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we don't have that, and it's just one less definition that we have
Yeah.
to do.
So how are we rewording this? Are we using the same wording as AR3 and just taking on this last part where manure storage areas shall be located?
Shall be designed.
Well, the thing with the AR3 and AR5 is that it says that it's not permitted unless provisions have been made. Whereas I think here we want to assume that it is permitted. They're going to have to store it. It's a commercial horse operation. They're going to have to store it somewhere.
So take out covered and contained and put designed? Or
Yeah, I would say manure storage areas shall be, and then skip to designed to prevent leachate from it.
Yeah,
So you take out covered or contained in a structure, so.
well, it's gonna enter the soil, which is what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want groundwater.
I'm coming back, I'm going to ask you, Mike,
Yeah.
how you design it? What do you, this is very nebulous. I
Well,
think.
it's like what Ray said. They can
Have a
say that they're
berm.
going to put a berm in. That they're I'm trying to make it so that the
not cost
person
prohibitive.
doing this can come up with their own
Design.
design, their own options for dealing with it, and that we're not imposing it on them.
Well, a pile of manure on the ground, unless it's near somebody's well or something, is not, I think, disadvantageous to groundwater. As you say, when you fertilize, you spread it all over the fields. It's all going to ground. The ground is a filter for all this stuff, but the animal waste is beneficial in that it's put nutrients back, nitrogen and other things back into the ground. So, I'm concerned that.
But as Ian said, this isn't about spreading it on fields. This is talking about storage. Spreading it on fields is not storage.
No.
Right.
The other thing is, the word on that same line where 200 feet is, the last word, you've deleted state. I'd prefer state stay in, because that defines a regulated wetland. There's two kinds of regulated wetlands. There's the federal and the state. The federal one, if you ever look at a map on federal ones, looks like a spotted tiger. They are small. Some of them are half the size of this table. And you'll go crazy. If you want to say you got to stay away from them, you will not be able to use almost all the property in town of Clinton, because there's just so many of them that they're closer than 200 feet. They're like spots all over. So state is 14 acres. They're regulated. They're defined on maps. Federal ones are defined on maps too, but they go down to such a small thing. I mean, if you walked across the field, you wouldn't even know where one was unless you had GPS and the map to tell you where it was. They're not obvious because it's not a source of you don't see water on a regulated wetland. There's no water necessarily there. It can be there, but it doesn't have to be. So you got to look at the plants. You got to look at all kinds of features that determine it. So I would leave state in and not allow then the use of the federal ones.
Well, for what it's worth, I really disagree with that, Ray. Wetlands are just disappearing from our country and the world at a rapid pace, and wetlands have been proved over and over again to harbor diversity, help the environment. They're naturally cleaning other pollutions that get into the ground and the water, and why we would want to allow someone to pollute further a wetland with a storage of manure is beyond me. To me, that I don't have a vote here, but I just really strongly object to that.
Well,
And I mean, I've looked at the wetland maps. I don't remember looking at the whole town, but certainly in where I live, there were none. I didn't see any.
Which maps did you look at, the state or the federal?
I looked at federal and state. I didn't
mean,
look at the
I've
whole
looked at
town.
lots of them.
Maybe you did, but I find it hard to believe this will be that restrictive and that there's that many wetlands in the town.
There
that
are lots of them.
Well, maybe we should look at the map and see. I mean, actually look at it.
The federal ones, yeah, there's lots of them.
The federal map.
But they're small, and you can't even see them.
Yeah, all you have to do is click on the box on the parcel access, and there's two. One is the flood area, one is the wetland. Just
State
click
wetlands.
on the wetlands. It does define. It does say state.
State.
I think it also says federal.
I don't know. I've never seen federal
I
on
thought
there.
it did, but anyway, it'll show you that quite a bit of the town, probably a third of the town, is in the wetlands.
And they continually change them. They're not static. But, I mean, I've looked at the federal ones, and they are spotty all over, and it
Well,
says
all
you
it-
couldn't
all-
do anything.
All it means is that the owner of a commercial horse operation has to look at the map and keep his pile of manure away from the wetland. I mean, if they have, you said 5 acres is plenty of room, then they just put it somewhere else in the 5 acres. I mean, I just don't, we should be protecting our wetlands, not exposing them to more damage, in my opinion.
Yeah, the federal ones are less obvious as wetlands as compared to the state ones.
Granted, it's on my phone, but I'm looking at a map right now, and it doesn't seem as spotty as you say. I mean,
You're looking at the federal or the?
yeah. USGS, U.S. Geological Survey.
Yeah, they're real small, and I don't know if you got enough definition. You could see the small spots.
Zooming in.
So why does it have to say state or federal?
Well,
Just
that's
say
why I think they took it.
regulated state wetlands, period.
Yeah.
All right? Why does it have to say either?
Causes you a lot of grief if you're using the federal wetlands on where things could be done.
But we're not saying federal, we're not saying state, we're just saying regulated wetlands.
Regulated wetlands, you're talking state and federal. By definition, those are the regulated wetlands.
Well, what we've crossed out is state.
I understand.
Let's leave state in.
I want to leave state in, and
Well,
that's
We don't
okay.
even mention federal.
Well, that's what Ray's saying, is that if it was just regulated wetlands, then it would include both. If we leave state in,
Then leave state
Then
in.
it just leaves, makes it state. And those are
That's the argument we're
well-defined
having.
on maps, you parcel access, you can pull them right up, and you can, I mean, there are regions of the town where they can't do much because of regulated wetlands. Just, you can't do anything because of that,
Okay, so we'll leave it in.
yeah. So we,
I'm just making known I'd like to keep it out, but I understand.
You'd like to leave it out?
Yeah, I'd like it to be both federal and state, but I know I guess he would. What do you think,
What
Dean?
do you think?
I don't know, without comparing the two, because I would think that they pretty much overlap each other anyway. I would look to simplify someone's ability to self-regulate themselves. And because of the county's parcel access, you know, where you can click on and see your property and pretty well define
yeah, all the environmental characteristics.
where those things are. Again, I think if we can make laws simple for people, most people will follow them. And so I'm in, you know, I think wetlands are one of the, you know, anything to do with our water is something that you can't fix if you damage at the same time. You know, there's a little bit of common sense to, you know, there's wild animals running through our wetlands manuring anyway. So, I mean, it's a tough decision. I mean, I don't know. At this point, I'll just say we'll go with leaving state in.
Yeah.
But I'll look at the maps and maybe next time I'll change my mind.
And we're taking public water supply out?
Sure.
There aren't any.
I don't think it hurts by leaving it in, just in case someone does create a public water supply.
Then you gotta
but-
have a definition, you gotta define it
That's
then
fine.
too. The next one, number 4, what's a corral? Do you have a definition and thing of corrals? I- I mean, you know, it's not the edge of a pasture, for
No, it's a
example.
smaller
I
fenced
feel like
in
the rest
area.
of the sentence defines what a corral is if you read the whole thing. Corrals shall be enclosed by fencing or other means sufficient to confine horses to the premises.
Right,
Well, that's all the fencing around pastures then. Typically, people don't think of that as corral. They think about it near the stabling area, some sort of fence structure there. That's what I'm saying. There's two ways of looking at it the way it's written.
Well, it's talking about means to sufficiently bound horses within the premises.
Understand? So then, take the word corral out.
That's what I was going to suggest, just delete corral. Just say all areas
Yeah.
fenced in for use by horses.
Yeah. I'm just saying, the corral adds confusion.
Okay.
So that'll be in B2 as well.
I didn't, yeah, there's B2 and 3.
Oh.
Clarify so that I got it that way. That was one of the points that I was going to get on. So if I understood you gentlemen correctly, you're going to take out corral area from A4, B2,
And B3.
and B3.
right.
Okay, that makes me happy. As I think as long Ray, if you got a 5-acre field that's all fenced, but you got a small area in the center of it where you're using horses and you have them on a long line and stuff, that's
do a
the corral to
training
me.
or-
You know, the corral's not the whole fenced-in area.
Anything else?
Yeah, and 4 It's very similar to number 3 above. We have public,
B4?
yeah, B4, very similar to A3. We took public water out, and regulated is, we put in New York State. Because here it's open regulated.
I have the map open now with the federal wetlands on it. There are streams, and it's more than the state, but there's lots and lots of empty areas all around where you can easily accommodate. I mean, I don't know where the horse farms are on the map, but I can show it to you if you want to look at it on my screen. There's lots of room to put manure piles. I mean, it is. Just don't think it's right to say, oh, we can't have any more horses in the town because the federal wetlands are here. I mean, you can take a look at it if you like. But I really would ask, I mean, Dean, you said you would look at the map afterwards and
Yeah.
maybe change your mind.
Yeah.
I would ask you to do that, and
Sure.
I think there's lots and lots of space in the town for horses.
Okay, thank you.
And then, this is the point I mentioned earlier, in B3, here the distance to the property line is only 50 feet. In A, it's 200. I think it should be the same. Well, I understand, but it's still horses. I mean, I don't know what if it was limited by size of manure pile or something like that, then I would understand. But this is buildings or enclosures where obviously horses will be kept without limit on the number. I don't see why it's as small as 50 feet. Horses are the same, whether it's commercial or personal.
The number is different typically.
Oh, can we make it 150 instead of 50? It just seems like it's
No,
awfully
I
close.
meant the number of horses. Private
Well, it can-
individual would have like 3 or something like
Well,
that.
it can be, but it isn't
They're
necessarily.
not going to have
and-
50 or 75 as a homeowner because they can't afford paying for all the medicine, doctor visits.
Well,
Other-
it may or may not. In general, it's smaller, but
Yeah.
it may not be smaller. Like you could have a commercial one with 5 and a family that owns 5 horses, and I don't understand why. I mean, if it was one horse within 50 feet, that's not so bad. But if it's 5 horses in 50 feet, that's the same as the commercial 5 horses.
I don't see change in that.
It's going to be like a tag team match tonight. On B4, I not sure how you reworded it, designed and stuff, so I don't have that written down. But I think that in the old current zoning law, instead of a neighboring property line, it said neighbor residence. Now, I applied for, got a permit, built a stable for 2 horses down there, and measured it back from the road, and my property line is the road. The building is 50-some feet from the road, so obviously there's no way in hell that I could get 200 feet from it for this thing, and I think that it's, I think that under B4, 200 for private is excessive. I don't have a problem with it in the above section A3 when you're dealing with commercial. But before I go any further, I found an interesting note today, and I made myself a note here. And if you look at the definition on page 15 of a commercial facility, it says 10 or more horses. And my thought was, what if you have less than 10? I don't know, it didn't, the definition for commercial horse boarding facility left me with that question, because like I said, it says, and I highlighted it on page 15 of the definitions. Commercial horse boarding operation means an agricultural enterprise consisting of at least 7 acres. We're going to put that back to 5. And boarding at least 10 horses. So what if the person has 9 horses? They're not a commercial horse boarding facility because it says, and boarding at least 10 horses. So where do they fall if they got 9?
Or 5.
Yeah.
whatever.
because this isn't for your own private use as a pet and riding, this is for boarding. So when they're boarding 9,
Or training them or whatever.
it sounds like you got a potential problem here with the definition. Maybe it should be in boarding horses? I don't know. It just seems like potentially you could have somebody that would have 9 horses and then they're no longer a commercial horse boarding operation.
Or the worst thing could be where they have 9 horses, 2 of them are theirs and 7 of them are commercial.
It says regardless of ownership.
Okay.
The one
But
thing
it
we,
says and boarding, you don't board your own horses.
If you're boarding, would that not fall under commercial versus your own private horses?
This says and boarding at least 10 horses, meaning somebody's paying to have their horse there,
Right,
at least 10.
right.
And I'm saying, what if they have 9 horses? They're no longer, by this definition, a commercial horse boarding operation.
Why would, so what are you saying, take 10 out? Just use the definition of, if you're boarding, it's commercial?
Yeah. That's what boarding implies.
so you want
Right.
somebody who,
So,
Just have one
somebody
horse.
comes to
Just
them and
boarding.
says, can you keep my one horse here? We're gonna make them a commercial horse boarding operation? I don't know if you,
By the nature of the fact that they're paying to have their horses somewheres, they are boarding their horse. I'm not sure if it's true. I was told the horses up here, I was told they pay $2,000 a month to
I have no
have
idea.
those horses there, you know?
that's neither here nor there though, like, you know, if it's one horse, I mean,
Okay, get back to mine. What are you gonna do if it's 9? They don't fit the definition.
I get that. What I'm saying is I think there does need to be a line as a difference between somebody just, you know,
It's
keeping
kind of-
somebody's horse or if they're doing it as a commercial enterprise. There's got to be a line somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is we're creating a threshold in which the impact is now significant that it should be more regulated versus somebody who's just, you know, doing 1 or 2 horses here or there. It's kind of like adds a little extra income, but they're not a full
Right.
But
boarding
it sounds
operation.
like none of these rules would apply to them.
Well, no, they would go back to private.
Yeah, they go to B.
Go to section B.
No, not by the definition of,
Well, then that's
of-
what we should make it.
if you go on page, I think 45 of the definitions, which is, I believe, private. An accessory use located within an accessory building in which horses are kept for private use and not for hire. So, a private stable is entirely different. It's more or less what I would say your pets. Private stable is not a commercial horse boarding operation or a commercial equine operation as defined herein. All the way in the back is the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
Stable, private, yeah. Page 45 of the definitions. I just happened to be reading that today and I said, wait a minute. If they don't have 10, then they're not a commercial horse boarding operation. And then if you have less than that, then you're going to have a problem because it says then you got this money in there that receives $10,000 or more in gross receipts annually from fees generated, you know? So if they don't receive $10,000, and I don't know how you find out what they receive,
Well, they have to file with
Form F,
Form F with the assessor.
assessor.
well, they can say, I'm doing this for a friend, I'm only charging them $100 a month, you know?
They can.
So, I mean, under stable private, we can add in where it says it's not, commercial horse boarding or operation, equine. which is over 10, or for less than 10, this applies, or we can add something in.
Yeah, because I would also say the private stable, a building in which horses are kept for private use and not for hire or sale, that's different from boarding, not
Yeah.
for hire. Hire is renting out the horses. That's
Yeah.
different. That's completely different from
Well,
boarding.
not renting them out, you're
Well-
paying the care of them. It's like the bed and breakfast for the horses.
That's boarding. That's not for hire.
No, that's right.
Taking
Okay.
care of somebody's horses for a fee is boarding the horse.
Right.
Horses for hire are a different thing.
They crossed out the word compensation. Sorry, Russ, the word compensation used to be in the definition of private stable,
Yeah.
which I think would then pick up, because it says would not, are kept for private use and not for hire for compensation or sale. So I think that would have included
Yeah,
boarding.
compensation would, yeah.
Where's-
Kept for
where's-
compensation would be boarding.
Where's
right.
compensation in
Right
it?
there, it was crossed out, see? I don't know which version you're
Oh,
looking at there.
okay.
Yeah, you see? I think that would, maybe we should say boarding, because everyone knows what that means. It's a little clearer, but
Right.
I think it used to cover boarding.
There was no such thing as a private stable before. This is the new section that's been put in the law. It's not in the current law. So
Well, something
that
was there.
blue that you crossed out was something that they were doing, and then somewhere along the lines, they reevaluated it and crossed it out. There is no private stable in the current zoning law.
Well, the way this is written in my book, there is one in the current zoning law defined as an accessory building in which horses are kept for private use and not for hire or sale. Anything that's underlined in my book is new.
If you look at the schedule of use for the town, you will see that there is no, unless I'm missing it, and you can correct me if you did,
Looking at it right
but there is nothing, I have the old one and I have the new one. There is nothing in schedule of use for private stable. There's animal husbandry,
I have private stable in
I'm looking at the current
there.
one.
Page 6.
There's on page 1-3, public stable or riding academy.
25066, original book, Public Stables and Riding Academies.
Public stables, not private stable.
Right.
We're talking about private stables here. So you had public stable and riding academy, but you didn't have private stable. Private stable's been added in this new revision that you come up with. And I mean,
I mean, there is a definition for private stable, stable private, in the original language.
okay, but it's not in the schedule of use.
I have it on page 6 as something that has not been added. It's not underlined. Page 6 of the schedule of use has.
The old ones? The
Well,
ones that currently in effect? What you're looking at is
So
new
what
ones.
I'm looking at, anything that's new is underlined, and private stable is not underlined.
Well, be that as it is, I think if you look in the current zoning that is in effect, you will not find private stable. You will find public stable or riding academy. Do you have the old
Yeah.
book with you?
This had,
Yeah, I just looked it up.
yeah, this has private stable, semicolon, public stable or riding academy deleted. That's what it has.
Yeah, replace public stable or riding academy with
Right.
private.
No, they
Or
took-
just deleted it, yeah,
just deleted it.
just
That's what
deleted
it is. The lines through it, so. And apparently, private stable was not added as something. They just deleted the other words.
Yeah, they deleted the Public Stable and Riding Academy because that was
Confusing, probably.
no, it was put in as the new language.
But if private stable is new, it should have been underlined.
It's not new, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the current schedule of use. And going through it, I find animal husbandry, which we still have, and then I find nothing as a private stable. All I find on the third page is public stable or riding academy, 25066. And I see nothing about private. And the way I see it, private is a totally new thing that's been added. I mean, I'll call up the old one on the computer and look, but I'm sure I did, but. I mean, I don't know where to go on this, but another problem I came up with here is, Ian was talking about the distances. I have no trouble with 200 feet in the A3 for a commercial, but I think for a private, I think 50 feet for the building is more than adequate. Under 4, the old section said, when it said within 200 feet of residence, not a property line, I have a problem with that. This is what really upsets me about this. Under 250.32 animal husbandry, you say you need 2 acres for the first horse and 1 acre for each additional horse. I noticed in the town of Stamford zoning law, which I have a copy of in front of me, that they just say for horses you need a minimum lot size of 1 acre. But then if you get into the more restrictive area, which is evidently their RC rural center and lake recreation centers, their most serious thing is you need 1 acre for the first horse and a ½ acre for each additional horse. Half of what we want. But we have a thing saying animal husbandry, you need 2 acres for the first horse, an acre for the second horse. And you need a minimum of 3 acres, okay? However, in the new private stable, in schedule of use lists, if you look at the schedule of uses, you've got down 5 acres. There's no mention of that 5 acres in 250.66, as there is for the commercial, where it was 7 and now you're leaving it at 5. It does say you have to have 5. There's no definite mention in B, applying to private stables, where you need 5. And if you look at the schedule of use now that you're proposing for the commercial stable, it is permitted in every area in the town. And there's no notation after the P of the land size. But if you go to the private stable, which I still say is totally new, and on a private stable, you see, interestingly enough, it's not allowed in a floodplain, but the commercial stable is allowed in a floodplain. But everywhere else, you have to have a special permit and 5 acres. So it's not mentioned in the section saying that you need 5 acres, but in the schedule of use it says you need 5 acres, and now you need a special permit, where the commercial doesn't need any permit at all. So why are you becoming more restrictive on a private stable than you would be on a commercial stable? To me, that's entirely the opposite of the way it should be. If you're going to say special permit, it should be on a commercial horse boarding stables, but not on the private. They need to be flip-flopped in my estimation. Are you following me, or am I
Well,
confusing you?
you got me a little crazy, but I understand what you're saying.
I see the special permit for the private stable, and yeah, the commercial just says a permit.
And what's going to be the more detrimental to anything, whether you're talking about water or anything else, the commercial with more activity is going to have the potential to have a more harmful effect than the private one that has his horses, pet horses, you know?
Right.
So, looking at this, in the animal, where I am, I have the land under animal husbandry. I have the 2 acres plus 1 acre more, but to build a stable, and if you look at the definition of stable, it's a building. To build a stable, I need a special permit and 5 acres. That's in conflict with the animal husbandry section. So, in other words, I can have the horses, but I can't build a building for them to go in, because you need the 5 acres to have the building, even though you only need 3 acres to have the horses. So that 5 acres for a private stable, I think, is ridiculous. So I guess to synopsize what I've got here, I said,
So we should make commercial horse boarding by special permit in all districts. And as long as they're meeting the 5-acre requirement for private, it should be allowed.
it should not be a 5-acre requirement for private.
He's saying it should not be.
It should not be more than what's for animal husbandry,
Yeah, and,
which is 3 acres.
and if you look at the section we're going through, the 66, it says a minimum of 2 acres for the first horse, and 1 for each additional. It
One
doesn't,
for each
doesn't
district.
say 5 acres anywhere.
No, but it does in the schedule of use.
I know.
And it says special permit. I think the special permit and 5 acres are both erroneous in that section.
I think you're right.
And the special permit should be in the commercial, and there should be no mention unless you're just gonna put,
So we should just put everything except for the MR1 and CR1 that has to have 2 acre. Well, I mean, the other one cancels out, so we could just put allowed use, permitted use. So we should just put permitted use in all, because it still has to comply with the 2 acre requirement as per animal husbandry.
Mhm.
So we okay with that?
yeah, I would
So we'll just make it all permitted use.
put a P all the way across for
Right.
private stables. Now, I don't know, I just keep throwing rocks in the mud puddle here, but under F, for private, you got a dash, meaning not allowed, but for commercial, it's permitted in a floodplain.
Well, I put special permit in all of commercial.
Right, but what I'm saying is, for commercial, you see it's got a P under F for floodplain, permitted.
Yeah.
But for private, it doesn't, it's not allowed in a floodplain.
Well, if it's a special permit, though, they'd have to get the special permit, and if it's in a floodplain, they probably wouldn't, I would imagine, right?
Well, I mean, you can go down here on Clinton Hollow Road,
Did again.
right next to the park.
Yep.
And all that land on that side of the road is in the floodplain.
Yeah.
It doesn't flood all that often.
Yeah.
I can remember this area where the church hall is next door being underwater.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
55, Hurricane Diana, the bridge was completely packed with trees down there. You couldn't get out of Sheltsville going that way. You couldn't go to Clinton Hollow or Salt Point, and you couldn't go up the hill. You had to go to Bull's Head to get out of here. So that whole field where we have our geothermal, as far as I'm concerned, is floodplain next to the town hall here. But if a person had that property, I can't see why you wouldn't allow them to have a horse there, because the chance of the flood is maybe once in 100 years. So the other 99 years, it's not allowed.
So Ray, I mean, Russ, I already changed it, so I think you're beating the dead horse
So
at
for
this point.
private, we got just P all the way across,
Yeah, I just put P across.
and for
Commercial, I put special permit.
And are we making the change on B4 or not, from 200 feet to 50?
Well, that we haven't gotten to yet.
Well, he's mentioned it.
So before we move on to, then, in talking about definitions, commercial equine operation and commercial horse boarding operation,
Yeah.
we've changed it in section 66 to be a minimum lot of 5 acres, so the definition should say consisting of at least 5 acres
Right.
instead of 7.
Now, you do have another dilemma in that definition of commercial horse boarding operations. You have a regardless of ownership that receives $10,000 or more in gross receipts annually. So if they only get $5,000 in gross receipts, then they're not commercial. Just like if you're under 10 horses, you're not commercial. I'm just pointing it out.
Yep.
So an
Doesn't
and is very
But doesn't
important.
it come down to whether you're charging
No.
or you're not,
I yield.
When you have a dollar value,
as opposed to, why does it have to be a dollar value?
I didn't write it.
No, I'm saying,
Well, to get
What's-
the ag exemption in
that's-
New York State, you have to have 10,000 worth
Right,
of income.
you do?
Yes.
Okay.
but it doesn't
that's
say you
why it
have to
also
be an
says-
ag exemption.
And that's why it also says through the production and sale of crops, livestock products, I mean, it does the ag exemption definition.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but a person may not want to have the ag exemption.
Okay.
So he's not commercial then.
So what were you saying as far as the acreage?
Oh, in the definitions, it says right in the first sentence, consisting of at least 7 acres, it currently says, but we
Right.
changed it to 5.
5.
So those, in the definitions, it should be 5 as well.
Yeah, I already had
All right,
them changed.
Now, just to further confuse things, we haven't even mentioned it, but if you go back to 66, what does a dude ranch fit? They're not stated or anything in here.
Yeah, we had the conference center dude ranch
Yeah.
law in existence.
You said the magic
But-
words.
But I'm just looking at, it's sort of a horsing operation with additional other amusements associated. Could be swimming pool, could be bocce, I don't know, whatever. Square dancing, who knows?
Lodging, dining,
Yeah.
picnic grounds,
Yeah.
boating,
think
camping.
lodging,
golf
yeah.
tennis.
I just ask, does dude ranches fit under 66? Or do we have that covered someplace else?
Dude
Well, it was
ranches
under
have been
conference center.
deleted.
We did it under didn't we under conference centers?
It's
and dude
deleted
ranches?
right
Well,
now.
We were deleting it if we
Yeah.
were changing
Conference
the
center.
event law that we didn't do.
Yeah, so.
Shouldn't, since dude ranches have horses, shouldn't the horsing part of a dude ranch, which is now regulated under the event section, shouldn't it be subject to the same rules? It's the same issues. There's horses there
That's
for
right.
commercial purpose.
There is a definition in here that's been scratched out for dude ranch.
But,
Well, you don't have to redefine it. You could. You could just say, broaden the definition of,
See dude ranches.
well, you broaden the definition of commercial operation to include a hotel or, place to stay that has horses, a resort. And then it'll pick up, the same rules will apply to the dude ranch that applies to everybody else who has a bunch of horses.
Commercial.
yeah, I just didn't want us to overlook it. I wasn't-
That's a good point. I was suggesting a solution to
Yeah.
the point you made, Ray.
Yeah.
Did we solve Ray's first problem, which I thought was an important one, that if you're a commercial operation, you have 9 horses, you have no regulation at all?
No, it goes to private.
You're private.
You'd be regulated under the private.
It'd be considered a private
Under B.
operation.
And-
The definition of private says not for hire,
Right.
so you can't be charging something to be private.
And the 10,000, same thing with the $10,000 threshold, we need to deal with what if it's $9,000? They shouldn't escape regulation. They should still, maybe there's a lesser regulation, but they should still be,
I personally don't think we should get into the $10,000 kind of business because that's an aspect that the owner wants to do. The owner may choose not to want to be in an ag district. So what? He could still be under regulations.
we could
there.
delete the reference to 10,000 completely.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, well,
I don't think
that
it
solves that problem.
advises.
That solves
anything.
that part of the
Sounds
problem.
over-regulation.
And I also get concerned with the 10,000 since it's taken from ag and markets, and the state can change the ag and markets regulations at any point, and then all of the things in our zoning laws
Everything
that's
gets
based on
mixed up.
that is screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, if a person truly wants to make money, you would then get the 10,000 gross, you'd lay out your business so you got that. We don't have to tell him how to run his business. He should be smart enough to
I'm not
figure it
arguing.
out. No, I'm just saying, it should be the owner's prerogative as to whether he wants the ag exemption or not. Shouldn't be our requirement.
That's fine. But then I think but as to the first point, the number of horses, we need to change the definition somewhere. Maybe the private stable has to be, private stable has to be changed so that it's just as broad as commercial, except it's less than 10 horses.
Against that, I'd say you change commercial just to boarding, you got the 10 horses,
Oh, so that's okay.
somebody is being paid to
If you're being paid to do it, even if it's 1 horse, you're commercial, and if it's your own, it's private. That works for me too.
Yeah.
It's easier, actually.
Or if you have some of each, gets even confusing.
Well, but if you have some of each, the commercial regulation is broader, I think, tougher than the private.
Oh, I know
So
it,
if you
yeah.
have 1 boarding and 1 private, you're governed by the obviously by the
Yeah.
commercial.
I just want to, well, yeah. I've been accused of wanting to over-regulate in the past, and I'm feeling the opposite right now, because I think if you're somebody who just, you have a friend who wants to pay you to keep one horse on their property, I don't want to turn them into a
What's the big
commercial
deal?
operation.
What's the big
I-
deal?
And I mean, it's easy enough that they just don't tell you and whatever, and
gonna-
they move on, nobody's checking it, but
We need to cover the gap one way or the other.
Mhm.
Different ways of doing it, but we can't, the way it is now, Russ was right, it's just incorrect.
yeah.
It's Wild West.
But, Russ, you have no problem with the 50 feet from the property line. And if suddenly somebody has one friend that's paying them $200 a month to keep their horse, now they've got to be 200 feet from a property line. That's what you're doing. I want to make sure that we know that that's what we're doing.
I don't know the answer,
Okay.
Bring the baby in and we'll split him in half, as Solomon said, I could see a person having their own horse, and maybe they've got a neighbor that says, can I board the horse there? And I don't think, because now they got two, as long as they meet the requirements for the property, that they should be considered a commercial horse boarding. I know that by saying boarding, it opened it up, but by the other token, it's like if you put on the limit that unless they have 10, they're not commercial. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I see.
you got four geniuses sitting up there, so one of you should come up with the answer,
Well, I mean, it kind of kind of reminds me of the short-term rental thing,
Yeah.
where what is the ultimate thing that we're looking to prevent? And if we have, let's say, the owner on site, a bed and breakfast versus someone who's not on site, as in like the Airbnb, the hosted versus the non-hosted, is really where the concerns were, where people were having these parties in the houses and disturbances and everything else. And so if someone has a private horse paddock, whether their horses are paid or they're not paid, if there's 5 or 10, is really the difference of what we're trying to regulate, So if it's 5 and we say 5's okay, it's a manageable number, and you got the number of horses per acre, then that may be fine. But if you have 10, but let's say you have 100 acres, it's still, again, kind of okay, because you're not overloading the system. So it's hard when you create these laws that are like one size fits all, and there are exceptions to those rules.
Well, I'm content with you leaving it the way it is, but I mean, I think that it raises questions. I assume anybody that's going to have a commercial horse boarding thing is going to have more than 10 there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be beneficial to them to be boarding the horses. They wouldn't be able to make a profit. I withdraw my thing and forget everything I've said. Leave it alone and just go with it.
I don't know if I'll ever get that life back.
I hate to disagree with my good friend Russ, but I think it's a mistake to have this gap. It just makes no sense to have a gap. There's different ways of solving it, but to have a gap, to me, is just a mistake, because then if you're in the middle, you have no regulation at all. We've got to come up with a way to regulate everybody to a lesser extent if it's private and smaller, or a greater extent if it's bigger and commercial. But it's not hard to do. Just
Well,
come
our
up
problem
with a
is
rule.
when it's smaller in commercial,
Right.
not bigger in commercial.
It doesn't trouble me to say smaller commercial is still governed by the commercial rules. If you're in it for money, then you have to abide by the rules. Or you could say, look, if it's commercial for only one horse, then you're private. But more than one or more than two,
Well, yeah, so is there, like, if that number was down at 5 horses instead of 10, does it make it easier?
And again, I say it's the lot size too.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just say if you have less than 5 horses, you're private. You're type 2, less regulation. More than 5, you're type 1, more regulation, like we did for short-term rentals and get away from private and commercial, just call them two types. I mean, that's what making law is, about drawing lines. It's somewhat arbitrary, but that's where you guys get paid all the money to be up there, is to make these hard decisions. You got to draw lines, and then no line is perfect, but you got to draw one. And I don't care so much which line you draw, but I think you need a line somewhere.
This is really a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do we have to put the number of horses in either of these?
Because what Michael was saying is that,
Because it's an ag thing?
no,
No.
it is simply that if I have 3 horses of my own and I let someone put their horse on my property and I say, give me $200 a month and I'll board your horse, should they be now regulated as a commercial horse operation?
No.
So if you don't put a number, then everybody's going to be lumped into a commercial horse operation solely for the fact that they got paid.
The number of horses are going to be regulated on the private side anyway, based on the
Acreage.
property, acreage.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about this commercial definition. It has to be at least 5 acres,
Okay?
but stabling at least 10 horses. Well, if you have 10 horses, you have to have 11 acres. So,
The acreage limits the number of horses.
Well, it's not a matter of the acreage and the limitations. It's the what threshold does it make it commercial?
Yeah, that's the difference. 2 horses and
5 horses,
5
10
private.
horses.
Is that commercial?
No.
It's not 10. And
What does Sanfordville say?
Oh, I find yours very interesting.
Oh, jeez.
Theirs is really short and sweet.
Why is it these one-page sections that you think that you could blow through take the longest? We finished 4 sections of 16-page items.
Horse, this is standard care, keeping and harboring horses. Horses permitted to be cared for
Why don't you read it at the mic?
and harbored in the town of State. Stanford's 164-19.2, care, keeping, and harboring of horses. Horses are permitted to be cared for, kept, and harbored in the town of Stanford. These horse operations shall mean the use of any parcel of land of any size for the commercial or private use of horses, including but not limited to boarding, breeding, training, riding academies, livery, and pleasure. So it's one, For recreation or competition, the keeping of horses is permitted in all zoning districts provided the following standards are met. There's a minimum lot size of 1 acre. It doesn't say how many horses, it just says 1 acre. In the rural center, RC, and the Lake Recreation Center, district of town, there shall be a minimum of 1 acre for the first horse and 1/2 acre for each additional horse. Adequate provisions shall be made for the disposal of manure to prevent any health hazard or nuisance condition with respect to the adjacent properties or the general community, including and not limited to water and air. No distances from your property or nothing. In all zoning districts, this is where they allow you to have 10 cubic yards. That's not a point right now. Adequate fencing to keep the animals onto the property. So, obviously they are extremely liberal compared to what we have, But they lump it all in. It says for commercial or private use of horses. And they just basically have it limited by the size of the lot.
Acreage, yeah.
And like I say, I assume those are the 2 most restrictive are the rural center and the lake recreation districts. You gotta have 1 acre for the first horse and 1/2 acre for each additional horse.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
And nothing
I
about
don't know
property
if that's
lines.
reasonable to have 1 acre for a horse. Just for the horse's benefit. I mean, mean, I've never owned a horse, but, you know, it just doesn't seem reasonable to me.
Milan, public and private stables and riding academies. No building in which horses are housed shall be located less than 100 feet from a lot line. Storage manure, no manure shall be stored within 200 feet of any residence. Period. A and B. That's it. Milan. You know.
No commercial or private usage can,
It just says public and
Differentiate.
private stables
yeah.
and riding academies. I mean, I don't hope I don't offend anybody. Well, maybe I shouldn't. That's never bothered me before. I don't know, the fellow that the town hired as a planner, I don't know where his background was, whether it's town of Poughkeepsie, city of Poughkeepsie, whatever, but I think a lot of this has, I'm assuming, his imprint on it, which doesn't really apply to what the town of Clinton really is. That's my feeling of looking through so many things in here, you know? It's like, do we really need this overregulation? I don't know how you're, like I say, it's a dilemma. I don't know how you resolve this one.
Well, if you wanted to do the simple forms like you've talked about there, you just take away A and just leave it as B. And you got to change some words for commercial and stuff like that. And just go with it that way. Maybe do a little twisting here and there, but just have one category.
Well, I think that you do need stricter regulations for somebody who's going to have a lot of horses.
A big operation.
I think commercial would be more restricted. I think that's why you need a special permit for them to do it. I think there's more potential for injury to the environment and whatever. But I don't know the answer of how you're going to word it. We have a lawyer in the house. I suppose he would know the answers. No, I'm open for suggestions, but I think all of you are mulling over it too. You know, how do we address it? You know, if it's less than 10 horses, I said, you know, just they're boarding it. And then Mike brought up, well, okay, you have a horse and you let your neighbor board your horse there. I guess the best way would be to keep your mouth shut. You know.
Or the other thing is where you have 11 private horses on your property just because you like horses.
Yeah, as long as you're not exceeding the acreage requirement, you know.
That's what I'm saying,
And
the
like you said
acreage is
here,
the key.
you got to have 5 acres for commercial. 5 acres allows you, is it 4 horses? 2?
Yeah. The other problem with that 5-acre thing is that how much of it is usable? I mean, I know, and not to pick on anybody in particular, but you go down on Clinton Hollow here, next to the park, just the north of the park there, they have their horse riding ring and stuff like that. But most of the 20 acres, that property, and the property's for sale, that's why I know how much it is, the 20 acres, most of it is down the hill and in across the stream. I mean, so we're giving them an exemption for 20 acres, which maybe only 7 or 8 of it is usable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a poor way to make a law either.
But, I mean, you can have I don't know what the rule says. If you go on, I looked on there when you had things in there for pigs and chickens and stuff, which were ridiculous too. So many acres, I think, in here for a pig. You don't raise a pig in so many acres. You raise a pig in a pen is maybe 20 by 20. You know, you don't have them out in 2 acres of property. Nobody would fence in 2 acres for a pig. You'd raise them in a pen, and that's the way it's done. Same thing with chickens. You have them in a small enclosure. You don't have so many acres for 15 chickens or something, you know?
Well, you got
You can have an acre for a horse fenced in and do it very adequately. When I had the 2 horses down here, I went out every day with my little garden tractor and a little trailer, and every day I scooped up every road apple I could find, and I spread it through the 5 acres of the woods. Now, I don't know if you're concerned about that going into the ground and polluting groundwater, but that's the way you get rid of manure. You spread it thinly, and it is used by the plants and absorbed, you know? So, I don't know.
The one thing, though, you mentioned other livestock. With the vogue of having free-ranged things, whether they be goats, rabbits, chickens, geese, I don't care, you get a lot of acreage for a few animals nowadays.
That's their choice, at least.
No,
We're not telling
no,
them.
but I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
That's another style of operation. So.
Well, it's our hobby farming.
Well,
So where do we go from here? Throw out the baby with the wash, or
oh, Arlene can help us.
Have you been watching this argument
No.
from home?
No, she had a meeting.
so John, what you've been missing is that we've been going over this commercial horse boarding, commercial equine operation. So
So where we at right now? Commercial horse boarding?
that's what we're
Well-
talking about
All day,
all night.
all night.
So far.
This one-page
One
thing
page,
has
an
been
hour and a half so far.
a real dilemma.
You were on that review, right?
Yes.
I'll mention what the dilemma is here. The dilemma is under commercial horse boarding operation. Means an agricultural enterprise consisting of at least 5 acres and boarding at least 10 horses. And I raised the question, they're boarding 9 horses. What do you got here? Because it doesn't meet the definition of boarding at least 10 horses. Now, private stables is usually people keeping their own, and they have different requirements. And I said, Mike Witten brought up the point, well, supposing you have your horse, but then you let your neighbor board his horse at your place for $200 a month. And it's like, now, are you going to fall under the commercial? If I said, leave out the 10 acres, just boarding horses. But if, like he brought up, you turn around and then you hit the private stable guy with all the requirements that are for the commercial horse boarding. So it's like a dilemma, where do you go? And it specifically says in boarding at least 10 horses, and then it also mentions $10,000. So what if they don't meet those requirements? Where do they fall?
Well, because it's the ag and markets more than the.
Yeah, that's something different. Ag
That's
markets, if they're getting a
Nothing to do.
deduction, that doesn't, that shouldn't regulate the,
Yeah,
ag market shouldn't regulate our commercial boarding operation.
that's a financial decision made by the owner. Does he want to go into that program or not? It does not have to.
Where did we get that 10,000?
It's been put in because it was probably trying to match what the definition
Yeah.
of agricultural.
Exemption.
I think we're all in agreement that that would get taken out of the
Yes,
definitions.
Yes, that's got to
Okay.
go out. But,
We're just trying to figure out what our line should be for a commercial horse boarding operation and
and mixed use.
somebody, you know,
And
yeah,
mixed
maybe
use.
a mixed use thing, yeah. Because he has a good point. What if somebody has got 9 horses?
Yeah.
It's clearly a commercial, but I don't want to force somebody putting their friend's horse on their land to fall under the commercial horse boarding regulations.
Years ago, we have this.
You got to get up at the microphone. No, you're going to have to be. You were never shy before.
Unless we can get your daughter down here with a mobile camera, and then you can sit right at your seat.
Years ago, I think 10 years ago probably or more, when we had this huge thing on the planning board about the commercial boarding on Sealback. I don't know if anybody remembered
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yes, and there is a certain, I don't have it here, I have it in my office, this is the commercial boarding regulations. So I think we should look into that. I will give you an idea how it relates to our code.
But, you know, again, I fall back into what is it that we're trying to accomplish? You know, what is our concern? What are we trying to avoid? What are we trying to regulate? Is it really the number of horses? Is it the excrement? Is it the noise? Is it the smell? Is it
With
the
the commercial, whatever.
Again, 10 horses, whether it's commercial or it's not
Or
it's
commercial,
private,
it's,
it doesn't.
it shouldn't make a difference because
Well, we also have
the
a
outcome is
horse.
still the same.
We also have a horse regulation of how many you're allowed, how many
Oh, yeah,
horse
yeah,
you're
yeah.
allowed,
That's per acre.
depending on your acreage.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Why don't we just do this? This is just a simple thing. Instead of putting 10 horses for commercial, put it 5. And then put the bottom for private up to 5 horses.
Okay.
Then there's no gap. Now, whether you want 5 or 7 or whatever,
I think that's a great idea, but we then just get rid of commercial and private. It's just type 1,
Yeah.
big and small, or type 1,
private
type
is up
2.
to 5 well,
Because otherwise you're going to have a gap again, right? I think just number of horses is fine, because I think Dean's exactly right. What we're concerned about is number of horses, disruption, smell, and all that.
but that's why
pollution.
we have the acreage like, 2 acres for the first, 1 for every additional. That limits it right there.
Right.
Exactly.
That's correct, but we also have, there are other differences between the, the A and the B, and that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the distance to the property line, right?
And I think that's where we can maybe fix this.
no, the 10 is where you gotta fix it. You gotta change 10 to some other number and take the other one and bring it up so there's no gap.
Your favorite headache is returned. I think Ray might have a thing boarding at least 5 horses for commercial, and then, like you say, delete all that other about the money. But
Yeah.
then for stable private, and again, you're bound by the property that you have, so you can't, just go up beyond it and say an accessory use horses are kept for private use. And boarding of others' horses up to a total of 5.
So that
Horses
would be a good difference.
on
In
the property?
private, you can have as many horses as your acreage allows, but you can only board for money up to 5. But you can have 15 horses if 10 of them are yours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you and like I say, your animal husbandry comes in with those things which I think are over restrictive. I think Stanford's is much better, acre for the first and half for the everyone after that. But if you turn around and say that the private stable can have his own horses and can board horses up to an aggregate number on the property of 5, and then you use the commercial of 5 and more, and I think that it's important myself to leave the differences in. I disagree with Ian because I think that the rules should be more restrictive on the commercial. I think as
On the
we
big
already
operation.
changed that you have a special permit. I think for the smaller one, land provided, you shouldn't have to go through the hoops, and I think that the distance for the 2 different ones should remain as they are, smaller for the private and bigger for the other one, more volume of horses.
All right, so I think we're kind of in agreement that private will be boarding up to 5 and commercial will be boarding over 5.
Yep.
Okay. So I think to kind of put a close on this,
As long as we
How
have
are
the
we doing?
acreage defined, that's it.
B4, as far as that 200-foot issue, because I think that was the only,
Well, the B4, the 200 foot is to the wetlands. We're
That's
talking about
wetland.
B3, the
oh, the 50.
no
No
fill,
building.
yeah, the 50 feet. One other thing, just to go back for a second. In the private stable definition, we should specify that boarding is the important word there. Boarding up to 5, but you can have however many of your private horses that your acreage allows.
Your personal.
Your own personal horses that your acreage allows. As long as you're boarding,
As
receiving.
long as it meets
Yeah,
250-32,
yeah,
blah, 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 blah.
okay.
So it's up to 5 commercial,
And over 5.
over 5 above. So we have no dead zone. And then private is any number.
Right.
Because I know families that had like 10 horses and they were their own. They were racing horses, you know, at various ages and training and stuff like that.
I've had 4 myself, just
Oh, yeah?
myself, you know. You shouldn't have to restrict that.
I mean, I rented out my property to a woman that had 3 horses. I mean, but, you know, I had 9 acres, so, it, you know,
It fit.
it fit.
Okay.
So it's still the 50-foot thing.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to go to 100 if we want to
Okay.
find a happy whatever, a compromise.
Okay.
To say no building versus no building that houses animals.
Building or enclosure. Oh, yeah, because I would assume that's what this meant anyway.
Where are you?
I mean, if you want to increase it, if you want to define it as the boarding,
Well, following regulations apply to private stable, so we can write no stable or enclosure shall be located closer than 50, or 100, I mean.
100. Okay, I'll go with 100.
Obviously, I don't agree with you. I think that for private, you're limited on where you are. And as I said, and affected me when I got the permit to build the 2 stables down there, or the 2 stall stable. I measured from the line, the highway line, and measured back, and my building is about 55 feet from the edge of the pavement. So there's no way, you know.
again, you know, that would
And-
mean that you would be subject to a variance, that's all.
Yeah, because, I mean, you'd have to have 2 acres to begin with. That's 90,000 square feet or so. I mean, 100 feet isn't onerous.
Because now you got the extra horses that you could have there,
Mhm.
which we didn't have defined before. So it's, I don't know.
Well, I still think that.
Plus, you're
that's-
not doing commercial.
Huh?
Plus, you're not doing commercial. This is only regulating commercial horse boarding, commercial 8-point operations.
Well, the commercial, no building can be closer than a property line of 200 feet. On the private, you got it down, it's 50 feet.
But private's now only talking about boarding up to 5 horses.
Correct, in addition to your own.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as you got the acreage.
But we're only
But-
talking about really the commercial operation of it.
Well,
Which is
we're
boarding.
talking about B3, though, changing the 50 feet to 100 feet.
No building shall be located closer to
Right,
the property
but
line.
isn't this whole section really just talking about commercial boarding, whether it be private, which is up to 5, or, I mean, why are we calling the section commercial horse boarding and commercial equine operation if we're eliminating, well, it does say private stables.
It does there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, never mind.
Yeah, it's so the little homeowner doesn't get into the more aggressive requirements.
I mean, again, you know, with your circumstance, Russ, I mean,
That's a variance.
it would just be a variance.
Well, I don't think that variances should be the way you have to go to get things. I think you should be more sensible in the regulations as they're written, so
Well,
that
I mean,
variants
the only
aren't
reason to
necessary.
give the variance would be for the fact that you have no other place to put that building except for within 55 feet of the road
Yeah.
or the property line.
The topography doesn't allow it.
Your topography doesn't allow it. That's why you're getting the variance. Other than that, someone would make you comply to the law
Right.
if you could comply with the law.
Well, sounds like I'm fighting a losing battle here, but you know my feeling.
You win a lot of them. You win a lot of them. Did we
All right.
finish that?
So are we done?
Are we?
Can I stick a fork in it?
8:45?
Are we gonna try another 2 hours for one page?
Wait.
We skipped over, you'll love going backwards. We skipped over 65.
Oh.
I had, which is ponds and lakes. Is it in order for me to make 2 comments about that?
Well, it's only A and B, so that'll take us an hour, so I don't know if we want to get into it.
Let's see what you got.
So the first comment is to do with the opening language, which is any excavation for building a pond of larger than 1 acre. It's okay, I guess that's okay, but what if this leaves out, you have a small pond, like I do, of half an acre, and I want to expand it to be 4 acres. I would think we should trigger the same rule if you're expanding an existing lake to
Well,
become more than 1 acre.
most likely, if you have a half-acre pond, which this law does not reflect, you would now be subject to the town's water law, which would require you to have a permit
To expand it.
to expand it.
But why wouldn't it say that here in
It-
65?
This is the old law.
Well,
This
is-
doesn't talk about the town's wetland law that was passed 10 years ago,
Okay. That's not
which
part of
goes down
this-
to a half acre.
Okay, well.
So the
all right.
language, as you're saying, should be in here, which it may, I'll have to look to see what the
I made
wetland
up the
law-
half acre. What if it's a third of an acre? And, my point is building a new pond that's an acre versus,
78?
The wetlands permit?
Yeah.
Control area, there is those categories whether you're in the control area.
okay.
Yeah.
Freshwater wetlands, water courses, lake ponds,
Yeah,
and floodplains. 250,
This
78.
wasn't touched either, yeah.
we didn't get there.
Well, there's no changes to it.
No, I know.
And that does have the updated 2008. I was wrong.
Yeah, it is adopted that.
Yeah, so it was 11 years ago.
Which of course opens the question then, does 65 need to be?
Reference to,
Yeah, I haven't read 78 yet because we haven't gotten there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, maybe this should be integrated into one rule. So I don't know what it says. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
78.
Well, if alteration of an existing pond is picked up in another section, then I would withdraw my comment, but I wonder why 65 is here at all.
it does seem redundant.
Maybe we should put this off until we get to 78? Would that make sense?
sure.
Are we doing 65 today or 66?
Well,
Just did
65 had no
66.
changes, so we skipped it because it never got touched by zoning revision. And we went to 66.
Should we just put this off till we get to 78 and then think about it
And
then?
look at both of them at the same time?
Yeah.
That's pretty extensive.
Okay, thank you.
Signs is long.
Well, I don't think we're going to get to another section. So I go back to the question I had at our last meeting, which was, are we going to have a meeting on the 19th?
19th of December, okay.
I don't have much of a life.
Which happens to be my wife's birthday, so
Oh, no wonder you're asking.
Before this, and then after that, you have a meeting.
I vote no.
I think we should skip one. Get a holiday ourselves.
okay. So then the next question is January 2nd would be the next meeting.
Oh, goody.
Are we going to have a meeting January 2nd?
If anybody's sober.
After New Year.
And then it would be the 16th.
And then it would be the 16th.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
did the second, I mean, that's before even the reorg meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
My only concern, folks, is that I'm afraid somebody might put a hit out on me if you're delaying it that long.
I don't know that
We'll
that
send
has
somebody
any
over for
bearing
a
on
well call. We'll send the sheriff's department for a well call.
So what, if we don't do the second?
Right, you need to do
It would go all the way to January 16th.
Right.
16th, I think, is the next.
So this is
logical
January
date.
16th would be the
Yeah.
next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
January 16th would be the next
And
meeting.
the next one, yeah. We're not doing the 19th of December or the 2nd of January. Oh, what am I going to do with all this time on my hands?
Wrap presents or put wagons together.
That's crazy talk.
All right, well, seeing no other business, I think we should call the meeting to an end at 8:50.
Okay. All
Early
in
night?
favor?
Second.
Aye.
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 See you January 16th.
Have a happy or Christmas if I don't see any of you.
We're done.